Well, I wasn't elected either. You want to start? All right. So open forum. We have an extended open forum, but also I have a small presentation on what to do when your SSD goes sideways. Since I've had two SSD drives that have failed in approximately 8 months of operation. Both of them were purchased at the same time. But I have, thank you, Samsung. They just sent me the replacement drive. That was an 870 EVO, which is a pretty much the standard to drive to use. I don't understand why it failed so soon, but all of a sudden the number of bad blocks goes up to over 1 million. That, you know, something's not quite right there. The thing was, on the one that failed, I wasn't able to back it up at all to recover the information because all the backups had failed. Acronis failed. Macrium Reflect failed. Basically, what I did was the only thing I really needed out of it was a backup of QuickBooks. So I was able to snapshot the QuickBooks backup file and make a new backup as well, just in case. Copy that across and reinstall on a new machine. But they all had the same error when they were going through trying to save the information from the old machine. There was some information that went through this bad block area that was not recoverable. And I'm not sure what happened to the SSD controller when it had these bad blocks. Not just marking it bad and keeping on going, but you also couldn't, check disk would keep getting you different results every time you did a check disk /F. Would fix it, and then you go back and do it again, and would try and fix it again. Wasn't successful. And then I tried Samsung Magician and let it do the full service scan and say, okay, now repair these things. Unable. Oops. Mm-hmm. Well, this SSD wasn't worn out. Something broke in it. Something has gone south in it because the number of terabytes written, TBW, 1.9. Yeah, I know. It's nowhere near 600. Yeah. Well, both of these drives are purchased off of Amazon at the same time. And one of them has been replaced. And I'll take this replacement drive to go in and do the same thing that I did on the second one, on the first machine, and replace his SSD, and then call Samsung and said, here, I got another warranty replacement for you.
Ed, just a minute. Were these drives at either a discount price or unusually cheap for their capacity?
Nope.
Okay, then you've got defective drives.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, this is pretty much, hold on. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, these drives were purchased just about a year before I called up Samsung. They were purchased on June 6th of last year and $114 a piece. Well, I have 860s and 870s. My two 860s have no problems whatsoever. these two 870s, which I thought, oh, they're just a 1 terabyte version. I'll just use those. I had no problem with them, right? Well, I have two of them that been belly up. Now, granted, I can't control the environment in which they're installed. I got a preschool teacher director working on one. I have a church secretary working on the other. If something doesn't work, somebody could just be pulling a power cord out and resetting it, but hopefully not. Yeah. I mean, I have enough fun. When I tried to do the upgrade in place, after I figured out you remove out all the HP software, just migrating these machines to Win 10, in like about 6 attempts, I had one sort of go all the way through, but it had some different errors that said after it was done, it still needed some additional patches, or you needed to remove some other programs that failed to convert across. When I tried to repeat it again, it failed again, and it would fail at the same point when it's trying to reboot Win 10 after doing the install, after whatever it was doing. And it said, okay, I was unable to do this, so I'm restoring it back. Boom. Nope, don't think it said that. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I am assuming it is some sort of driver incompatibility on these other HP systems that doesn't affect it if I do a fresh install of Win 10. Fresh install of Win 10, no problem. Boom, went right through and installed. It's just when I try and do this convert in place on Win 7 to go to Win 10 and try and bring the apps across, nope, burn me right there. So yeah, well, the other thing is my two HP laptops, which were both business level laptops, they had no problem doing some of this. Although I qualify, the one machine that had been converted like this with Win 10 at one point just stopped booting either Win 7 or Win 10. I ended up pulling out the Win 7 drive completely, installing a fresh copy of Win 10 on it, then plugging the Win 7 drive back in, formatting it, just using it for storage. But this machine has been basically it's a dual boot Win 7, Win 10, and it's a 21H2 now, or 22H2. What is it up to? Whatever the last one in Win 10 is going to be. Yeah. 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 Yeah, this is, well, the thing is this one won't go any farther beyond 21H2 because this is still using an Intel 2nd generation processor. Even though it's probably faster than most of the spec ones that would go. An i7 with 16 gig, should be more than enough. Yeah, well, the reason I'm using the i7 today versus the i5, I've noticed on my i5, even though it's still got 8 gig of memory or something, it should be more than enough throughput. For some reason, when I'm using Zoom and I do any sort of work with a web browser, I will get issues with the audio on Zoom where I get a little bit of interrupted audio and also some maybe a little bit of screen distortion. Not sure if it's screen pixelation or what, but on that machine, and it's no problem with the Ethernet interface on this. It's like 300 megabit throughput on it's a gigabit interface, and my download speed is 300. My upload speed is at least 12, and I'm the only one that's doing anything uploading at the time. Well, it's not running out of memory. Doesn't even come close to using all of the memory. The thing I think is I don't think Zoom is using any sort of prioritizing of packets on the internet Ethernet interface. I mean, if you're actually sending real-time information, you should be using 801.2p packet prioritization so that the routers can say, oh, this is higher priority than this browser crap. Throw the browser crap to the side and let this go through. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the other machine has got a direct Ethernet gigabit interface. This one is nothing more than 802.11n, maybe about 100 meg throughput, and this one never has a problem. What did you say? Oh no, this one goes over 100 because it's at least a 2+2 on this end, and the other end is 3x3. Oh. Well, no, I can push a 1x1 to about 96, and because I have engineered the wireless in this particular location, I'm focusing the power of the access point, which is about 52 feet away from me right now. And although Win 10 doesn't let me actually see the actual dB, the power, the actual signal strength level, it's actually beamformed here. I have a reflector on the back of the access point, focusing all the power toward me here. Okay. And it's on 5 gigahertz right now. And let's see if I can pull this guy up. Channel 161. Oh, thanks. And I can't. It's at minus 67 dBm, and maybe minus 62 dBm between that. And so I should be able to go full speed at minus 62 dBm. If I was at like minus 75, then it's going to be falling back. But if I'm in the 60s, I got more than enough signal strength to be able to sustain that speed. Mm-hmm. Let's see, what is Zoom taking right now on this machine? So right now on the 16 gig machine, it's idling at about 4.4 gig right now on commit charge. Well, Zoom is using over 2 gig of memory on this machine, so I know it's at least a 64. The one significant difference between the two machines, other than one's an i5 and one is an i7, and one has more memory, the i5 does not have any video enhancement. So it just has the shared Intel video architecture. So I know that rendering the video is going to take more processor cycles, and that possibly could be interfering with it. But if it's just running Zoom, it's fine. If I just start up a browser in the background with just go to Google, all of a sudden I'll get a which seems kind of a shame. I don't know if there's a way I could prioritize some of the tasks. I'd try and play with that and see if that made a difference. But even if I would go and check email or something like that, or go scan for an email, just going to other things. Yeah. Okay. I have very few tasks open. Like right now I have or if I count Zoom, I got 6 windows. I'm task averse. Instead of running, like a browser with 35 tabs open, if I open a browser, it's got 1 tab open, maybe 2. No, that my way of doing it is that if you don't need it, close it down. It's not going to take long to load it back up again off an SSD. All right.
Yeah, I use bookmarks and I've got tons of them and I end up having to export them all over the place and copy them into documents when I have to collect from one device to another. I could sync, but I don't.
Bookmarks and passwords. Yay!
I don't save passwords in browsers.
I selectively will, if it's one of these things that you need to log in to get something, yes, I'll save a password there. If it's a financial institution, no. Does not get saved. All right, pulling more people in here. Kathy just joined.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's summertime, so yeah.
Well, either that or some people are busy watching the presentation on TV, which I'm recording right now, and I'll go watch later.
Oh, the January 6th thing?
Oh, yeah, good stuff.
I'll get the digest later.
Oh, good. I'm waiting for the celebrity roast that happens after this.
Yeah.
I thought the whole thing was a celebrity roast.
Well,
Yeah, that'll be coming out on YouTube shortly.
well, if you wanted the short thing, just wait till Colbert is on later and then listen to him.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll work.
Yeah. But okay, we have an extended open forum. So if you have a question, feel free to share it, and we'll see if one of our experts here can answer it. Expert, you know what expert is, don't you? Oh, it's real simple. An old a friend of mine told me, expert. Well, in scientific endeavors, X stands for the unknown. Okay, and a spurt, if you ask any plumber, is a drip under pressure. So you have an unknown drip under pressure.
Okay.
Oh, that's an old one. That's a dad joke almost. That one is at least 30 years old, maybe 40.
Oh.
And I think it was told to me by a plumber friend too. So there, master plumber. Just say no to crack.
Can I ask,
Oh, you have a question? Go ahead, Vicki.
does anybody know about IFTTT?
If this, then that.
Yes.
Well, that's what you're trying.
Yes.
It's a protocol. It's something you can set up. However, on most systems, it's not free. You have to pay extra for it. So if you're trying to set up an if this then that condition, like let's say if my video camera detects motion, send the video clip to this email address. Okay, it'd be one example. Where did you think about wanting to use if this then that?
I was just trying to use it. I didn't have a specific thing for it. I do have one that when I downloaded the if this then that, I have one set up, but I didn't set it up.
Okay.
Done by them. It's whenever the International Space Station goes over my house,
Mm-hmm.
it sends me a text message.
Okay. Well, that if wherever that if this then that was installed, was it done on your account or was it done on somebody else's account? And then you just happen to get an email or a text message.
I think it was done on my account. I'm not really sure how it works.
Well, you have to have a server where the if this then that resolves so that the action can be here's the inputs, here's the action, here's the desired result. So it has to run somewheres. Okay. Most of the time you contract for a server or a service, okay, on some Amazon server somewheres where you can do your if this then that. If you want to add this then that to Google, you have to contract with some service that allows you to support it, and it's an added cost option per month.
Because
So-
I got the if this then yeah, whatever it is, on Google Play.
So are you you got it on Google Play, but are you paying for it?
No, I didn't give them any money. So I might have to give them money in order for this stuff to work.
Oh, it's very possible because if you go to if you should have an account on the ifthisthenThat.com, okay, system, okay, and then that's where it gets executed on. So the thing it'll tell you, it says, here's how much they're going to cost. Here's the cheap plan, which only has a limited number of things. And then depending on how many activities you want to done and how many rules you have to execute, that's what it's going to cost. But if you don't have an account on if this then that, that's good reason why it's not working, or somebody else, you're leveraging off of somebody else's work and on their account, and that's how you're getting your information. Like it's a freebie. Like one person says, if it goes over this latitude, send everybody on this list a text message.
Okay.
So that's probably what it is. But if you have no idea what your if this then that account is, then probably you can't add too much to it.
Yeah, I gathered that. Okay, I'll check.
You can find more on ifthisthenThat.com.
Okay.
So I mean, I
Initials.
pardon.
The initials, or that's all spelled out?
It's the initials. IFTTT. Yes. .com.
3 teeth.
If this then that. Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of cool.
It is. I've explored possibly using it, but the thing that's turned me off is I didn't want to pay for an account. If I could do something for free locally, that's one thing. There are some services that you can install locally on your own stuff at home if you have your own QNAP server, and then you could set up your own if this then that server that resolves to your stuff and not outside to the internet. But not too many people are going to go through that level of work to try and install it. And then your server has to be on all the time for it to resolve these things. So, yeah, do I want to spend the money to have this thing running all the time so I can have this one thing that happens every 92 minutes? Okay. Yeah, it's a thought. There's other places that you can sometimes say, like my Wemo switches. I have the Wemo switches to automatically turn lights on and off. And one of the built-in rules that exists on these things is sundown. Okay. So when sundown occurs, turn that light on. and then turn it off at midnight. Boom. That's a rule. Now I have a rule to set to one to turn it on, one to turn it off. I could have done this with if this, then that, but there was built-in rules to already accommodate the thing I was looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, there are programs that will calculate the ISS trajectory for you and print you out for the next month all of the times that it's going to go overhead. So
Yeah,
if you're,
I might want that because text messages, I don't get them until after it's gone.
that's why it's good, it's advantageous to know about this in the advance. I think there's actually a website for tracking the ISS, and you can say, okay, when is it going to come over my house next, and tell me the next 5 best viewing locations.
I just want to know if you can see it with the naked eye.
Oh yes, you can, as long as there's no clouds.
Well, duh.
No, I'm just saying is that even with a slight cloud, you might be able to see it. It's one of the brighter objects in the sky.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, since you know, can you see it during daylight?
No,
It would
not
have-
unless it was like sunrise or sunset, and you had a flare event where something reflected off of the solar panels and happened to hit you right in the eye. You would not be able to see it.
Okay. So I'd have to look at night.
Yes, you do. We used to look for iridium satellites, which are now quite common, and that's what you see a lot of, or the Starlink satellites, which are taking their place.
Yeah. How big are those things? Links.
I don't think they're that big. I want to say they're smaller than a shipping container because they can install, like 40 of them on a single launch. So I guess they must, I don't know how big they unfold into is what I mean, because that's going to be how big you'll be able to see if it reflects off of the solar cell array.
It's probably not something I'm going to look for.
I know I could send an email to a friend of mine who's a JPL ambassador, and he'd probably get back to me with everything I needed to know.
Okay.
All right.
No,
Do we have any questions?
That's all I have for that.
Kathy, did you have a question?
You know, I have a question, but I'll be darned if I can remember what it is. I have to learn to write these down when they happen, and I do have one, but
It's called Prevagen. It's supposed to fix the.
if I think of it, I'll let you know. Otherwise, maybe next month I'll ask you that question.
Okay. Yeah. I usually think of some of those questions when I'm out there watching the birds or filling up the bird feeder. The other day I was out there putting some more sunflower seeds. Boy, the price of sunflower seeds, it's gone up 50%, I think. So I'm filling up the feeder and the birds are very appreciative of it. And this downy woodpecker lands on my back.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it realizes this is not the feeder. Maybe I shouldn't stay here. And then flips off and then comes and lands almost right in front of me on the feeder. Quite friendly.
Yeah.
Well, we have, I think they must be all youngsters. I think I've seen 3 of them on the feeder at once, and the larger one came by. That must be the parent. So these are the babies that have hatched and have fledged. So
And
they're
Mom is sitting there telling him, "You idiot! You don't land on that."
that's like the fawn we had in our yard many years ago. It came out of the hedgerow, and we tried to coax it back because I was afraid it was going to get stuck in one of my window wells, which were open at the time. So I was able to coax it back to the hedgerow. And then later on that afternoon, I'm watching to see if it came out of the hedgerow or not. And it was raining, and I happened to walk. I walked outside to see if it was still there, and I saw Mom was sitting in the hedgerow farther back. I'm like, okay, you're here. You can take over now. I walked back in, and I'm watching the hedgerow, and fawn comes out, goes back in again. Fawn comes out and goes back in again. I'm just thinking his mother is saying, "You idiot, get back in here. Somebody's going to see you." But my daughter is buying a new on a house, her first house, northwest of me, probably another 15 miles or so. Still in Barrington, but when we went to go look at the house first time or through the walkthrough, there was a fawn and a doe in the front yard. So she has that to look forward to every day.
Yep.
Have you remembered it yet, Kathy?
No, the closest I could come to is I think it was a cell phone question, but that doesn't narrow it down very much.
No, it doesn't. No.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll think of it as soon as we end the Zoom meeting.
Okay. All right. You just keep thinking about it.
Okay.
So did you have any, I guess nobody decided to have a meeting in my behalf last month while I was in Cancun. So,
I didn't attend one.
okay. All right. Nothing was sent up. Oh, the invite is the same invite. It doesn't change. Did you ever notice that? It's the exact same link every month. Oh,
I
in
second
Cancun,
the motion.
I didn't have quite enough bandwidth down there to probably support it. Although I did take one of my laptops down there, I was able to do something with it. But that's how when I travel, I will turn on or I'll have Verizon to make sure that, I can get service down there if I need it. But most of the time when I'm in another country, I will turn my phone into airplane mode, but then turn on Wi-Fi. So if I'm at a facility that has a reasonable Wi-Fi, I can receive all of my email, all of my voice calls, all of my text messages, all via Wi-Fi. So that's what you do. You go in, there's a setting on newer versions of Android that allow Wi-Fi calling, turn it on. And then you leave your phone in airplane mode, but just turn on Wi-Fi. And then once you've connected to Wi-Fi, your phone will start ringing. When it does, junk calls come the same way as regular calls.
Was
Yeah.
crime a problem down there in Cancun or not really?
Was there what did you say?
Crime down there in
Oh,
Cancun?
no. Well, no, not if you're out on the main strip. I mean, if you're in the main town of Cancun, there could be something there, but not out in the strip. No, I mean, a couple times, let's see. When we were there a couple years ago, there was some shootings down at Playa de Mayo, but that was way down the coast from where we were at. It was at a nightclub, and we only heard about it because my daughter heard about it and then asked me, "Are you guys okay?" I said, "We're like 30 clicks away. We're fine." You have more problems on the northwest side of Chicago than you do in Cancun.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter that was worried about us had a bullet in her house. So
Yikes.
yeah, yeah, it happens. Yeah, I think the gang member who used to live in their neighborhood has met his demise. So maybe they won't have any more gang activity there again. So I was explaining earlier. I'm not sure how many of you have discovered this. When you're on Zoom and you're using Zoom, and if you open up a web browser, does your audio have any problems when you fire up another browser or something else in the background?
I never fire up a browser, but anything else I fire up, I've never had that problem.
Yeah, I mean, when I fired up a browser, like just launching another browser to go to Google, like I just opened it up again and opened a new tab, and I don't hear any differences in the audio on this machine. But on my other smaller machine, my i5, it'll start to the screen tearing a little bit of distorted audio, because I'm knowing it's going to have lost packets of some sort.
Well, I do have a Chromebook that runs Linux, and if I log into Zoom on that, screen sharing will cause the video to flicker and cut out a lot. Because that's a Core M3, which is not a terribly capable processor.
Right.
It's a Skylake.
Uh-huh.
So it's not the most modern, and it's only got 4 gig of RAM.
Now, I haven't actually pulled up the Zoom stats while I was actually doing any of that stuff. In the past, sometimes I will try and do that and see whether or not that caused any of the issues, but I'm not seeing any, at least in Zoom on this machine, I'm not seeing any packet loss.
Mhm.
And this is even a slower link than the other one. The other one is a gigabit link, and this one's only doing 802.11n. But it seems to be perfectly happy with the latency. I know it has some jitter between 2 and 3 milliseconds, but that's usually dust. If it's less than 10, you don't have any issues. The latency is a little bit higher, though. It's 28 and 25. Yeah, something to experiment with. So I've been attempting to work on various computers here at home for friends. I've migrated some more machines over to Win 10 from Win 7. One of them was my plumber friend of mine, and that one I bite the bullet on some of these this time. I just said, give me your machine. It's going to be gone for like at least 2 days, maybe 4. And I just take the machine, then I'll back it up, try and throw a Win 10 in there, give him a dual boot if he needs it. Most people don't need the dual boot as long as they have all of their files, have their email program. They're happy as a clam then.
Our clam's really that happy.
Well, they just sit there and filter water all day and get bigger. That's got to be happy.
That depends on how much pollution there is.
Yes. Well, they take it out. Their brothers, the zebra mussels, have done a damn good job in Lake Michigan. The water's almost clear now. Of course, now they have a problem that there's not enough food for some of the other fish because the zebra mussels have filtered it out.
Yeah, but eventually the clams do get poisoned by the pollution.
Yeah, depends on what it is. If it's going to be forever chemicals.
It doesn't even matter the persistence. It matters the concentration and the toxicity.
Well, the forever chemicals, the PFASs,
Yeah,
those supposedly does not take a lot at all. We're talking parts per trillion. Any amount is supposed to be bad. And at least in us higher formed mammals, it seems to accumulate in our body tissues, which is not a good thing. And now they've discovered that the forever chemicals are in the drinking water for everyone who gets water out of Lake Michigan.
Great.
Yay. That's all right. I still have Keating Spring. I pump it out of the ground myself.
Eating spring. I like that.
Yeah. I took a bet to get that one right now. Well, if other people can put a name on their spring, just fine, Like that Fuji water, I think when they first came out, some of the Fuji water had too much arsenic. Not enough to kill you or enough to call it from being sold, but it had some. More than you would find in water you would find in Cleveland.
well, if you ate brown rice, you're getting arsenic too.
I had some today too, so that's good for me. Is it trivalent or pentavalent? I think it's only trivalent. That's the safe one.
It's not really all that safe, but yeah, it is the less dangerous one.
It's the shellfish one, yes.
Well, it's found in the brown rice because that's what's in the water
Right.
that is used on it.
Yeah. And that assumes that you don't rinse it 3 or 4 times, right?
You can't really rinse it out. It's systemic.
Oh, it is. Okay. All right.
It's a mineral. It gets incorporated into the plant.
Okay.
Although it is more in the brown part of the brown rice than in the starchy part.
I thought maybe it was because they used womanized wood in the rice paddies or something.
Nope.
That's pentavalent.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is something that's in the water that comes out of the ground. They've got it in other river delta environments too, like Bangladesh.
So the brown rice that we typically eat in the US, is that from Texas?
Texas, Louisiana, that area.
Okay.
But it
And yeah-
only happens in brown rice and not white rice?
White rice is more refined, so they
They-
take out where the highest concentrations are.
They strip the hull away and that's what makes it white rice.
Mhm.
And that takes out a lot of the arsenic. But then you don't have as many of the B nutrients and you can still end up with rickets. So
Yeah, that's why they fortify it.
all these things you didn't want to know but forgot.
Forgot you didn't want to know.
Oh, maybe you didn't want to know. That's fair. Yes. Let's see if I have this thing. I want to open this. All right.
Oh, and as part of my research about a question that Pete was asking on tips and tricks, he was asking, can you monitor which cores are being used by your programs in Windows? And you can monitor, and you will find out that actually modern Windows will use the available cores, but the programs, it depends on the program. However, there is something I discovered, which has been known for a long time, about the Windows resource monitor and how it reports CPU percent usage.
Mm-hmm.
The graphs are fine, but the numbers, if you have a turbo capable processor, are always at 100%. It's not calculated correctly. Microsoft knows about it and they just simply say, so what? We're doing the right calculation. It's your processor that's doing the wrong thing. The
Yeah.
fault is with the end user. So that led me to figure out, well, is there some other little display that will do a good job of system monitoring? You know, like we used to have things that were in the taskbar or the tray
Uh-huh.
area.
Right.
Turns out the sidebar gadgets are available for Windows 10 and Windows 11. They're not a security nightmare, the way some people say.
Okay.
But Microsoft doesn't want them because they interfere with the new widgets for Windows 11. And they take your attention away from the store apps. So it's the widgets that go down in the taskbar now in Windows 11. But this sidebar that goes on the right-hand side of your screen, I could show it if anybody wanted to see it. There are some gadgets available that are still being maintained. And one of them is a system monitor that links into CoreTemp. If you put CoreTemp in, then you need .NET, and then you need .NET 3.5,
Okay.
which is also still supported for a while now.
Right.
And then if you've got all that, you'll get your temperature and you'll get your percentage use, and these will be meaningful percentages.
Okay. Cool. Does
So-
this is it automatically available, or do you have to download something to enable the sidebar?
You do have to download something.
Ah.
WinArrow is the
WinArrow.
group that supports the sidebar gadgets. And they have you do a couple of other downloads. And one of them is .NET 3.5. The other one is just the sidebar framework, which I think they don't do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait a minute. They do it, but they don't do this gadget. This gadget is from somebody else who is supposedly reputable.
Okay. I use Process Explorer, and then I expand the graph to show all cores.
Mhm.
And as I'm watching the Zoom, it looks like it's only using the first processor, and not the all processor core, the even cores, not the odd cores. And
Okay, right now I'm getting my first 4 hyper threads out of 8 that are being used while I'm doing Zoom.
yeah,
But
and
when they're-
mine is running on CPU 0 core 0, CPU 2 core 1, CPU 4 core 2, CPU 8 or 6 core 3. So
Yeah, mine's doing hyper threads 0 through 4,
okay.
which is the first 2 cores. And if anything else fires up, it will fire up on the higher cores. So if I do something like launch LibreOffice, that will start using the other cores.
Okay, cool.
And during startup, where there's a heavy load because there's a lot of things starting,
Hmm.
it'll cascade upward into the higher cores. So Windows starts in the pre-boot on just one core,
Right.
but it rapidly expands outward if the cores are available.
They probably couldn't figure out how to resolve resource conflicts when it's first firing up without doing it. So let's just single thread it here until we're up to this point, have the kernel running, and then we can go.
Yeah. Once the kernel is running, it does what you'd expect it to do. It tries to balance the load. And some of this, of course, is controlled by your computer firmware.
Okay.
But
Cool.
these are really nice gadgets. I also have a monitor that does the uptime
Okay.
in great detail and tells system details.
All right. So did you put any of those links in chat? That would be nice.
Oh, let me see if I can grab my little document. It's hanging around here somewhere. Meanwhile, you guys can move on to whatever you want.
Cool. All right. I will go ahead.
Tips and tricks. Wasn't that on the list of tips and tricks that Tim puts out? Didn't they put it on the website? Wasn't it listed there? I'm looking for it.
I don't recall seeing it there, but it could be there.
Where is it normally?
Well, we have Tim on this call, so he can tell you where it is.
Mm-hmm. Tips and tricks. Where are they? Yeah, whatever you put out, where is it?
I think she wants to know about the FYIs.
That could be it.
Sign up for that. And then Sanford picked some of those for his meetings. So
Right.
those are in the announcements of Stanford's meetings, tips and tricks.
Oh, I should take a hint from that.
So when to get them, they would be in the email, right? Okay, I think I already am. I think I'm just confused at where they are.
Well, they're not
But I will
stored
check.
anywhere. So they're coming in an email, but when the new website evolves, then there'll be a place to pigeonhole them.
On the old website, we had them up there, but
Yeah.
since that expired, the only way you get them now is emails.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Got a question. I got
Sure.
something. Going back to the smartphone and the Wi-Fi and airplane mode. Recently, I was waiting for someone, went to doctor. They were going to call me up. He said to be picked up. And he said he was trying for a long time with his phone to contact me. And he says, finally, a staff member says, put your phone on airplane mode and then use it. And that's what he told me. So put in airplane mode and use it now. With the Wi-Fi, does that mean that the phone automatically searches for a Wi-Fi connection and connects to it, or?
No, two things have to happen, okay? You have to connect to whatever local Wi-Fi you're at. So if you're in a doctor's office, you have to allow it to connect to the local Wi-Fi Because it's not going to just search and automatically, oh, I found a Wi-Fi connection. I'm just going to connect to it. No, everybody's got a password on it. So unless it's an open system, you won't normally be able to get into it. And now if you want to receive the call because you have poor coverage for cellular, the thing you would do is if you have a new enough Android or an Apple, you can enable your phone to do Wi-Fi calling in the settings menu. So in settings, I believe it is, let me see that, I'll find it right here and now, and then I'll be able to tell you where it is. All right. Let's see.
I do have Wi-Fi calling.
Unless you're looking for it and then you won't be able to find it.
Yeah, I won't be able to find it. I know I will find it. I know it's here. Here, hold on. Wi-Fi calling. If you search for Wi-Fi calling, you will find it.
Okay, two things. I do have Wi-Fi calling on my Android. The other guy has an Apple or Mac.
Well, okay, on your phone, if you have Wi-Fi calling enabled, you will be able to receive a call while Wi-Fi is enabled and in airplane mode
Okay.
if you are connected to the local Wi-Fi.
All right, great.
So that will work for you on his end because the way a phone call works, the cellular phone model is two half call models put together. So you are using one half call, his half call, however he wants to connect to. If he wants to connect to the PSTN and contact through this public switch network through his cellular connection, he can do that. If he wants to do Wi-Fi calling, he can do that. If he has a VoIP client that he can run instead, basically like what you have inside of Meet Now, the Microsoft Meet Anywhere's capability, all previously known as Skype. That's a VoIP call, so you could do a VoIP call as well. Any of those half call models will connect to your half call model.
Okay, good. Thanks. Thank you.
Something I did in a past life. Okay,
Okay. The full explanation of what I was talking about is posted.
cool. Thank you. Okay, and I have time here to throw up my presentation. Okay. When your SSD goes bad way before the warranty expires. Everyone can see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, solid state drives do not live forever. Okay. They do have a fixed lifetime. It usually is specified in something like TBW, which is terabytes written. Okay. And it's different depending on the size of the drive. The smaller the drive, usually the fewer amount of terabytes written before it expires. Okay, so there's an example here. For a 250 gigabyte model, you only get 150 terabytes written. For the 300, for a 500, 600 for one, 1200 for a 2 terabyte. Now, you think about this, you put a smaller SSD into a unit because you don't think you need that much, and then you fill it up more because 3 Windows releases later, you used up more than half of your space. Now you're just going to wear out your SSD drive that much sooner. Maybe Microsoft requiring us all to have SSD drives is in league with the SSD manufacturers so that they can sell more drives. But that, 600 terabytes is a fair amount of terabytes, but how do you know if you've gotten there? So how do you know exactly how close you are? Well, one thing you can do is if you have something like Speccy or anything that can pull out your SMART, SMART information out of your SSD, you can pull out the total number of logical blocks written. And if you have the number of logical blocks written and the block size is 512 bytes, which is what it is on most of these SSDs, then you can calculate how many bytes have been written. Or you can use the Samsung Magician. You can just see it on the screen. So here's an example of an SSD drive. And on the, come on, I want to slide down. Well, there. On the thing that keeps getting obscured on the bottom, it has total LBAs written, and it's a big number in the billions, okay? So that's a big number right there. That's the number you need to take out and multiply by 512. So there's the number, 3,561,083,737, and multiply it by 512 quickly in your head. Okay, now divide this by 1,024 times 4, or times itself 4 times, because Samsung calculates its terabytes as powers of 1,024, not powers of 1,000 or 1,000 times 1,024. Okay, so technically, I guess that's called a terabyte, okay, instead of a terabyte, but that's the way they measure their hard drives anyway, so they have to be consistent one versus the other. Otherwise, all of their disk sizes would change and not be competitive anymore. Or you can load Samsung Magician Dashboard, and it tells you right inside that blue circle how many terabytes you've written. So on this one that's been with me for probably a year, not quite. I've gone through 1.7, and I have at least 300 on that particular one because it's a 500 gig hard drive. So I'm pretty far away from hitting the maximum on this according to this setting, okay? There's a lot of stuff that's available in the Samsung Magician. You can see the items on the left-hand side, the dashboard details, performance benchmark, diagnostic scans, performance optimization, and over-provisioning. What is over-provisioning? Simply take some of your disk space, take it away from your normal use, and assign it as just for spares in case locations wear out. So that can push off a little bit your maximum terabytes written or the time before your drive becomes unusable. If your drive uses up too many of its standard provision blocks, then it stops sparing them out. It has no place to get spares from. That's why you would over provision. So the other thing that the Samsung Magician can do with Samsung drives, at least, it can upgrade the firmware in the Samsung drive. So 2 of my drives both had older software. I have since updated the firmware. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But I have upgraded the firmware. It looked like it went 1 point release up. So things you can do. You can extract your smart info into a comma separated values file. So you can load it into Excel, and then you can do the same multiplication I just told you about in an Excel formula, and then it works fine. You can see details of the drive, including its serial number and other stuff, upgrade its firmware, check performance, perform short or long diagnostic scans. So this is basically my drive details with the serial number smudged out. Not that I would think anyone would use it, but just in case this presentation goes farther than normal, probably a good idea. Here's the firmware right here. And this is the latest and greatest firmware that's available. And it tells me my interface and whether HCI mode is activated, which it should be. This is Win 10. You can also have it categorize some of the files that you're using and how much you have and how much is free and the types of files if you want to go into that detail. Performance benchmark. Yeah, you can use a performance benchmark. Yes, it's fast. Much faster than a hard drive. Is it as fast as it possibly can be? Probably not. I don't have an M2 interface, so there's going to be some limitations on the SATA interface. But it functions. If you do a diagnostic scan, this is the way it's supposed to work, okay? This is just a short scan, but that should all be blue, okay? Where it goes through and reads and writes everything and said, yep, everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. This is as God intended. You're cool, okay? But what does it look like when the drive goes bad? Here's another drive that only had 4 billion logical blocks written, which is only about 1.9 terabytes written, and was purchased in June 2021, but it wasn't installed until about November. See the little red spots here? Those aren't good. Definitely not good. And then the other thing you're supposed to do is after it's gone and done and scanned, you click the recovery and it's supposed to fix the problems. Well, if it gets like this, then you get this error message that it's unable to fix those problems. Now you have to call up Samsung and replace your drive. Fortunately, because this one had all the documentation and I tried to use their tool to repair it rather than something else that might voided the warranty, they were happy enough to send me a replacement drive. Unfortunately, I bought 2 drives at the same time, and the other drive has also demonstrated very similar errors as well. Not as bad as the first one, but it is also demonstrating similar types of failure mode. So if it gets to this far, it's probably gone too far. The number of like uncorrectable blocks in this thing is like in the hundreds of thousands or millions. So not sure why this drive particularly failed. We were discussing some of the possibilities as to what might have caused this to fail earlier in the meeting, but thought maybe cloning it from a regular hard drive had something to do with it. I kind of doubt it. It just, I've had one fail, now I've had a second one fail. I'm going to use this replacement drive to basically replace the drive that failed. I don't know if I'm going to be able to back it up and restore to it or not. If I can't back it up, then I'm going to have to report all the information again and reconvert it to Win 10. And then hopefully go from there. Any questions?
Did you try the crystal drive thing that Bob just mentioned that could be used also when you were see if it compared?
I didn't want to try on the machine that I had the issue with. I didn't have time to really play with it too long. I might have a longer time before I send it back, but many of these things will only run when the drive is installed in a computer and not via USB dongle.
Crystal Disk Info, I have found USB connected external enclosure, if it has the right interface, will work, and it simply goes over to using UASP commands.
Okay, as long as it can function that way, because not all of these utilities will function if they're not installed in the actual hard drive and connected via directly to a SATA controller on the motherboard.
Yeah, that's where Crystal Disk Info is so much better than Magician also, because Magician does depend on things being installed.
I mean, I might try it with this one. I think I got an eSATA connection that I could probably plug it into and maybe do something with it, but I need to make sure I have the cable for it.
Yeah, I also have an off-brand SSD, which is my internal drive, and it's Chinese. It's got an unusual controller, and Magician can't make sense of it, but Crystal Disk Info can.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried an SSD in my, I have a USB cradle, a USB 3 cradle that I had to wait for Acronis to come up to the right release to be even supporting it years ago.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's one of the names that used to be one of the Tiger Direct house brands. I can't remember the name of it off the hand. But I mean, it was a really nice cradle, USB 3 hub, USB 3 interface, and then it would take either 5 1/4 or 2 1/2. But I may try that and see what I can see with it. And you said the reports. I'll have to Crystal Disk Info. I'll have to see what it says. It has a it doesn't try and fix anything, correct?
No, it's not a fixing program.
Just a reporting. Yeah,
It reports.
yeah.
And it'll report enough so you'll know whether or not you need to do something under warranty.
Right. Well, the one thing I did do on these machines is I pulled up the smart information off of the two machines, and I could see that the number of bad blocks, like, whoa, is way higher than zero.
Yeah, Crystal Disk Info is basically for smart data, but it does present additional data.
Okay.
What I have is a Samsung, I think it's an 870 Evo in an external enclosure. It's M2 SATA 3, and the USB connect is USB 3.2 Gen 2.
Okay.
And it has a StarTech enclosure, which has the MediaTek controller. That's very important. It has to be a MediaTek 500, I think it is, or higher controller.
So one of
Otherwise-
the Taiwanese MediaTek controllers.
What?
Isn't MediaTek Taiwanese?
Yes, they are.
Right.
And StarTech is one of only about 3 manufacturers who include the sufficiently high numbered model with the right
Okay.
firmware. The importance there is that I'm able to do trim on the
Okay.
external drive. That's a very difficult thing to do without that, especially under Linux,
Right.
because there you must have the UASP and it must be able to do FS trim.
Okay.
And the one I have, the other one that I have that is some off-brand Chinese name, that will not do it.
Right. I mean, I have several that are probably off-brand Chinese types.
Yeah,
But they've worked in the past to at least pull data off of them.
Yeah, I'm talking about the enclosure. The
Right.
enclosure is one of these. It's something I must have gotten off of Amazon, but it works perfectly well for all other purposes. You just can't get the smart data off it.
Mhm. I think I was able to pull the smart data off with one of my USB adapters. One of my USB adapters would support it, and I could pull the smart data. I didn't trust it to do much else, but
It depends on the particular SSD.
mhm.
The off-brand SSD is not so much. The Samsung, you'll probably have a better time
Mhm. Okay.
because they're more well known. It's better known how you pull the data off of a Samsung drive. I see we're having some kind of a secret confab here. So
Yeah.
okay. Well, anyway, all I'm saying is if you have the right kind of enclosure, something that has a SATA to USB connect,
Mhm.
can be read, can be trimmed, other things can be done. But Samsung Magician doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because that's the one thing that I'm going to have to put it into a chassis to make sure I can demonstrate to them it's broke, it's dead.
Yeah.
Or, in the words of Star Trek, he's dead, Jim. You get his tricorder, I'll get his wallet.
Yeah. That'll work.
Is Samsung the only one that's got basically a maintenance type program that they sell with their units?
I think you have to download it off the Samsung website, and sometimes it doesn't even have the right version online. You download it, you install it, and it said there's a newer version. Why didn't you give me the newer version already? So then you download the newer version, and then it's happy. But Crucial has something different. They have
Yep.
their own tool as well. I'm sure some of the other SSD manufacturers have to have something out there for people to categorize and to quantify whether or not they need to make a warranty return. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine, for example, that came with my Intel NUC was from someplace in China, and it's Biwin, Biwin. And I'm
Oh.
pretty sure that's the factory where it's made.
Okay.
So that's someplace in mainland China. And it does not like the Samsung utilities, but you can read information off of it with Crystal Disk Info.
Oh, okay, good. I'll have to pull that guy down and check it out.
But Biwin is one of these brands that's just like Tim says. It's labeled from somewhere. They all come from about anywhere from 1 to 5 different factories.
hmm
And you never know from the brand which factory it came from.
Why would you choose an off-brand? Is there going to be that much
I
of
didn't-
savings?
I didn't.
You did have a choice.
It was
Okay.
OEM. It was OEM.
Okay. All right.
And why am I still using it? Because the internal connector is capable of handling NVMe.
Mm.
And this one I'm using with NVMe. For Windows, it benefits from the additional performance. For Linux, it doesn't really care that much.
Okay. Doesn't care for Linux. Okay.
No, for Linux, it doesn't matter that much. I mean,
Mhm.
but this internal controller, if I try to use at least Ubuntu with the 2004 long-term stability kernel, it had IO errors.
Ah,
So apparently what is it? What do they call that? The newer way that the NVMe connects, that is, I'm drawing a blank on what they call it, but it's not the M2 any longer. It's some other it's the more advanced connector. There was M2 PCIe.
Oh, the older one. The PCIe is the older one.
Okay, it's older, but they've upgraded it to PCIe 3 and 4.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Which are now, yeah, there is a 5, but you wouldn't want to have to run it. It needs cooling that would practically require liquid nitrogen.
Question is, are you just running it so fast that all you're doing is spending time serializing data back and forth on the bus?
Yeah, but all I'm saying is some of the Linux kernels, at least the ones that are a couple of years old, haven't yet caught up with PCIe 3 and 4.
Well, if you want to do PCIe 5, you need at least a 12th generation chip to do that.
Right,
That's
right,
kind of overkill.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
In which case you would have been better off running it on the server farm. Probably cheaper too. I know some people that swear, some people might swear by liquid cooling, some people swear at liquid cooling, because those liquid cooling connectors, they're all metric, and when they go bad, they really go bad.
Mm-hmm.
They do wear out.
Yep.
And then you have to deal with water and electricity in the same place.
Yep.
Well, deionized water. Yeah.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that when you do things like go over to Linux and when you do other kinds of things, you may find out that some of the more advanced hardware doesn't function quite as well under other protocols, not necessarily older, just other.
Uh-huh.
Even the differences between, say, a Mac protocol and a Windows protocol.
Right.
And that's also something that will happen with if you try to convert a Chromebook to other operating systems. You may find out that things about the Chromebook either aren't supported or things about the operating system aren't supported with the Chromebook hardware.
Well, okay.
Drivers are a nightmare for Chromebooks.
I would think so. Especially because they don't want you to use the Chromebook with something else just because you no longer have Chrome support. Oh, you should be junking this thing, not using it for another operating system.
Of course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I remember her now.
Chromebox. Mr. Chromebox.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. That's right. Yeah. Yep.
Do you need to leave it shorted out or you need to short it out momentarily to clear the NVRAM?
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Gallium actually somehow extracted the Chrome drivers from Chrome OS and then compiled them into the Linux kernel.
Reverse engineered them.
Yes, but in a way that appears to be fairly ethical. Yeah, but I'll tell you something else. Xubuntu 2204 on my Chromebook, which is an Intel-based Core M3 Skylake. Xubuntu works perfectly well with a couple of exceptions. It doesn't have the right touchpad driver because it doesn't have Sunrise Point. And you could probably get a Sunrise Point driver for Linux. That's not bad. The other thing is it does have a keyboard that is pretty close to converting the Chromebook keyboard to a usable Linux keyboard. I made a couple of additional remaps, but when
Mhm.
you're in the XFCE desktop environment, you have tools that make it pretty easy. If you're only remapping a couple of keys. Yeah, there you go. There you go, Tim. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mhm. Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's all true.
Will 2204 play with old Core 2 Duos, or do I have to have a newer processor?
You would have to check. You can try it out.
Okay.
I try it on a live and then see whether that works. If
I'm
it
pretty
does
sure
not-
to run 18, but I wasn't sure about 22.
Yeah, the main problems with Linux and also Windows is that many Chromebooks are ARM, and when you're doing ARM, you have the reduced instruction set, and Linux is not yet up to being able to do that, with the exception of the Raspberry Pi Raspbian.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, AMD will work. Yeah. Probably.
A Ryzen 9 Chromebook.
Yeah.
I'm the fastest Chromebook on the planet.
Now you.
Of course. You know, you're talking a repetition of 30 CPS maximum on the keyboard. And when we used to use hard Terminet 30s and such like that, I'm dating myself. I could overrun the keyboard buffer, and that was 30 CPS, but
Yeah.
only for short bursts.
Mhm.
The thing was, is I could do forward about 120, but I had to go backward at 240.
Yeah.
How fast is the backspace? Yes. Okay, I put a copy of the presentation up on the chat, so anybody who wants to download can pull a copy down.
Okay.
And Sanford will be looking for this, I'm sure. I'll have to send it to him.
Well, I think Sanford's still poring over the article that I referenced to him, that I referred to him about how the New York City subways, at least as late as 2019, were still using OS2.
Ooh.
And he's an OS2 person.
Uh-huh. Did he, so he, basically did a lot of, that kind of work, huh?
When his family had their printing business, I think they were using us too.
Okay.
So that's where he ran into it.
Wow.
Mhm. Yeah.
My younger brother did a lot of stuff with OS2 when IBM was first bringing it out, because he lived down the street from Boca, and he was one of the contractors that, well, there was a lot of problems with their, remember the original PS2 floppy drives that they had to replace all on, that they had some problems with them? Well,
Yep.
he's the one that found that error. He said, no, there's a problem here. It's not working right. It's losing data. No. Didn't upgrade to the latest version and check it again. Well, he did, and they were still broken.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Hmm.
Okay. Anybody have any other requests or questions? Things that I should look for future meetings? I know that Sanford still wants me to do the HDMI thing. I have to work on that one for a while.
Yeah.
It's going to
Yeah.
take some work. There's too much stuff about it that, you can get lost. Yeah, with Ethernet, without Ethernet, with data, with no, yeah, all that good stuff. Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, DisplayPort would be an offshoot, so yes, it could be. Yeah. Well, HDMI has its security built in. I don't think DisplayPort has that same security thought process built in, so it doesn't handshake the same way. So in terms of, because it's primarily one direction, you're not bringing in DisplayPort information, you're only sending it out. So put that on my list. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but maybe for a future presentation, if anybody knows about it, about 3 weeks ago on TV, I heard somebody talking about a feature. They called it Google ID protection or Google ID privacy or something like that. And what they were saying was that it's a new feature that Google is offering, that if you know there's a bunch of information about yourself out on the web and that's public and you want to get rid of it, that you can somehow go to Google and say you want it removed. And I thought it sounded very interesting. So right away I went online and I did a search for it, and absolutely nothing came up. Now that was about 3 weeks ago. Maybe there's something out there now that I could look for it myself, and I haven't tried doing that in the last few days, but it was called Google ID protection or Google ID privacy or something like that.
I saw something about it as well. I'm trying to remember where I saw it though.
I'm sure it was one of the talk shows. I tend to watch the Today Show in the morning, and I'm pretty sure it was one of the talk shows, and most likely it was the Today Show that I saw it. So, I don't even know who their technology expert was that was even talking about the topic, but it just sounded like a really interesting feature. And so anyway, I thought I would toss that out there if anybody knew anything about it or could provide any information.
How to ask Google to remove your personal data from the internet?
There is a difference between the United States and the EU. In the EU, you have a right to be forgotten. And that means you can ask Google to remove everything relating to you if you're in the EU. If you're in the US, Google has new policies that allow some things to be redacted. One of the issues is in light of the vacating of Roe v. Wade. Some states are now actively pursuing people who get abortions or perform the services or transport people across state lines. They are doxing them. And that kind of doxing using Google services, people have been very concerned about how do you prevent it. And Google is trying to cooperate with people trying to prevent it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. And individuals who help transport people across state lines. Although when you run into the Commerce Clause, the Federal Commerce Clause, I don't know how this Supreme Court would rule.
That'll be
Because-
interesting. Well, if you see it again, Kathy, send me an email. And I'll
Okay,
look into it.
okay. Mhm. It's been since we had our last meeting, which of course we didn't have a meeting last month, but it just strikes me that it was like maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago that I heard this. And I only heard it the one time on the one talk show and then nothing after that. But if I hear again, I'll shoot you an email.
Yes, okay. ID removal services.
You can ask Google to remove certain things, like if your image appears on a Google Street View or your license plate or something, or if something else personal appears where it shouldn't. Google and also Facebook, Instagram can remove some of that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, the Roe v. Wade thing has a lot to do with your search history and what is retained and what is removed. And you can already get your search history cleared up pretty well.
Well, like a lot of it depends on if you trade, some of these things for security in Chrome might involve every time you search for something, it sends the information to Google, who's going to check it for you, but also know that you were there.
Right. And that's some of that is what you can remove. It's their history, the history they retain. It's not just the history that's in your browser. It's the history Google retains. And you can.
How did that old saying go? Those who trade security for safety deserve neither.
Yeah, except for one thing. That's a misquote.
It is. Okay.
Benjamin Franklin did say something to that effect, but it had to do with a very specific law that was passed by the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
About hunting. But interestingly enough, it did have some Second Amendment implications.
Okay. All right. If nobody has anything, then we can leave early and you can go catch the end of the January 6th presentation and see what we've missed. Maybe so. Maybe little to nothing. Who knows? Might be a big thing, It'll be wall-to-wall news afterward then. Well, one could only hope, Why? Was anybody here at in Washington on Jan 6th? Not that they admit to. Okay. I checked the chat. I have a copy of the presentation up in the chat. So if you want to grab a copy of it, do it before we end the meeting. You can also save a copy of the chat content so you have the stuff that Bob shared as well. Okay. In that case, everyone have a good evening and see you next month.
All right. Good evening, everybody.
Thank
Alrighty.
you.